But it is a choice, right? I mean, if you're choosing to add hormones to a child's body, that's a choice.
It's a choice blockers. it's a choice on the part of the parent.
The larger percentage was males who transitioned to female, and that the surgery that they received was associated with considerably higher risks for mortality, suicidal behavior.
Joe Rogan is known for being brutally honest, never holding back and saying exactly what's on his mind. No filters, no sugarcoating, just straight up opinions. When Rogan's no-nonsense logic goes head-to-head with woke ideologies, the result can be downright explosive. In this video, we're taking a closer look at all those moments when Joe Rogan completely dismantled his woke guests during some intense debates on his podcast. From heated discussions about trans rights, to fiery clashes over constitutional reforms, and even moments where he exposed the lies of mainstream media. These are the episodes that left viewers absolutely stunned. Get ready, because it's about to get intense. Let's kick things off with Adam Conover, the comedian who's also known for advocating some pretty controversial viewpoints. The topic, trans athletes. Adam argued that biological men who've transitioned should be allowed to compete in women's sports, an idea that sparked one of Rogan's most memorable takedowns.
With trans athletes who are, competing with with their gender, right? That is a sporting world that I'm more interested in.
Joe countered, saying, if a biological man transitions and competes in women's sports after 30 years of male development, it's unfair as taking steroids when the other competitors can't.
You're doing your very best to compete and you're at the top of the heap. But then someone comes along that was a man for 30 years and decides that they're going to be a woman, and this has happened.
Joe Rogan delved into the topic of fairness in sports, bringing up what he saw as a significant issue: the imbalance created when someone who has lived as a man for most of his life transitions to a woman and starts competing in women's sports. He highlighted how, even without the use of steroids and other performance-enhancing substances, these athletes still maintain physical advantages that give them an edge over their competitors. To Joe, this scenario was inherently unfair and, in his view, comparable to cheating. He argued that dominating a sport under such circumstances was no different than using banned substances to give an unfair advantage over others. Adam, on the other hand, wasn't convinced by the idea that fairness could or should be strictly defined in sports. He dismissed the concept of a perfectly level playing field, asserting that such a standard doesn't truly exist. While he acknowledged the societal norms and have historically drawn clear lines, like barring men from competing in women's divisions, Adam suggested that these distinctions might be evolving. When Joe pushed him further, asking directly whether it was fair for transgender women to compete in sports like women's weightlifting, Adam faltered. He hesitated and eventually offered somewhat an ambiguous stance, admitting that while he didn't entirely agree, he believed it could be permissible under specific conditions. Joe Rogan challenged Adam's stance on transitioning children, expressing strong opposition to the idea of allowing 7-year-olds to make decisions about their gender.
How does a person who starts taking hormones at a particular age, right? How does their body change, and how does that affect vis-a-vis athletic performance? I don't know. We're in such new territory here.
He argued that giving children hormones or enabling them to make such significant choices before their frontal lobes, responsible for critical decision-making, are fully developed, was unreasonable. Joe pointed out that this development could even occur until around the age of 25, making it premature to let children decide something so life-altering. Adam attempted to justify his perspective by referencing examples of children transitioning at an early age. He explained that if a child begins transitioning as young as 7 and starts working with hormones at that age, their physiological development would differ significantly from the scenario Joe was describing. However, Joe dismissed this argument outright, maintaining that there was no valid reason to subject children to such interventions so early in life.
How does a person who starts taking hormones at a particular age, right? How does their body change, and how does that affect vis-a-vis athletic performance? I don't know. We're in such new territory here.
When Adam tried to bolster his point by sharing a personal anecdote about a friend with a transgender child, he described how the child had consistently identified as a girl from a very young age without ever wavering. The parent, according to Adam, felt it was the humane and supportive choice to embrace the child's identity. Adam clarified that this wasn't simply a choice, but an inherent identity that the parent chose to affirm. Joe, however, delivered a decisive rebuttal that left Adam struggling to respond. Adam's inability to articulate a coherent counter-argument marked a clear turning point, when the conversation began shifting from debate to a pointed dissection on his position.
Yeah.
Okay, but if that's who they are, if they think that they're a girl, why do you have to give them hormones to make them more of a girl?
Joe Rogan pressed Adam on the implications of giving hormones to children who identify as transgender, questioning why altering a child's body chemically should not be considered as a choice. He pointed out the absurdity of dismissing it as anything but a deliberate decision, emphasizing that introducing hormones affects the child's development in significant ways. Adam struggled to respond, stammering and attempting to clarify, but ultimately failed to present a solid counter-argument.
It's a simple question. If you say that the child thinks it's a girl, so you're going to give the child hormones.
Mm-hmm.
If the child thinks it's a girl, let it be a girl. Like, you don't have, why are you adding hormones?
The exchange left Adam visibly flustered, and the audience was quick to criticize him, with comments mocking his repeated admissions of not being an expert. One remarked that if they had a penny for every time Adam said he was an expert, they could afford to hire a real one. As the discussion shifted, the stage was set for Pete Dominic, who entered the studio with ambitious ideas about rewriting the Constitution.
Our Constitution is also silly. Like, let's remake everything. Have a serious conversation about what kind of guns and bullets people can have. There's so much better that we can do.
Pete Dominic brought a bold suggestion to the table: scrap the Second Amendment entirely and rebuild it from the ground up. However, Joe Rogan immediately pushed back, highlighting the logistical impossibility of such a move. He pointed out the staggering number of firearms already in circulation, noting that there are more guns in the U.S. than people. Confiscating them all, Joe explained, was simply not a realistic option.
There's so many guns. You're not getting them all. It's not possible.
That's the most important point. There's already 330. There's more guns than there are people, so what do? I think you buy as many as you can back for a short.
Pete proposed a government buyback program as a solution, suggesting the use of taxpayer money to incentivize gun owners to voluntarily turn in their firearms. Joe, maintaining his composure, calmly dismantled the idea, explaining that such a program would barely scratch the surface of the problem, given the sheer volume of guns already in the hands of Americans.
The Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong by the Supreme Court.
We need to talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
No, because people can have guns. You can have guns.
And that the real problem was bullets. Guns people even Pete couldn't decide.
The main issue is definitely the guns and the bullets in them.
Well, the main issue is the person that's capable of shooting people with the guns and the bullets.
No, it's the guns and the bullets.
The guns and the bullet are inanimate objects. Without a person pulling the trigger, we're talking nonsense here.
Undeterred, Pete shifted his stance, arguing that the real issue wasn't the guns themselves, but the interpretation of the Second Amendment by the Supreme Court. Moments later, he pivoted again, declaring that the problem lay with bullets and firearms. But before long, he contradicted himself by claiming it was fundamentally a healthcare issue. Pete's reasoning became increasingly muddled as he rambled about the role of public health experts in addressing gun violence, further muddying the waters. Joe kept his cool, but the audience wasn't buying Pete's ever-shifting narrative. The takeaway, Pete's arguments were as disjointed as his talking points, and Joe's calm reasoning made him look like the only adult in the room.
On what?
Well, they don't have enough research on. They don't have enough research on gun violence.
Well, what are you
unfortunately,
talking about then?
I'm talking about if you want to know the solutions for what is impacting and creating death by any measure, accidental death.
And then came Flint Dibble, an archaeologist who stirred controversy by allegedly accusing Graham Hancock of promoting ideas tied to white supremacy. When Joe directly asked Flint whether he had made such claims, Flint immediately and categorically denied them.
Oh, I said that this idea of Atlantis, the way it goes back 200 years, it has been used for those reasons.
So are you saying your quote is incorrect?
I think that it's editing me out of context, Graham. I've never called you a white supremacist or a racist.
No.
Despite his denial, Flint spent much of the podcast dodging Joe's pointed questions, failing to provide clear answers. The conversation eventually shifted to the now infamous incident involving CNN. During Joe's bout with COVID-19, he used doctor-prescribed treatments, yet CNN misrepresented the situation by falsely claiming he took horse dewormer.
More breaking news this evening. Joe Rogan, an extremely popular podcaster, announced on social media today that he has COVID. In his statement on social media, Rogan said he has taken several therapeutics to recover.
To make matters worse, they went as far as editing footage of Joe to make him appear unwell during their broadcasts. Joe wasn't having any of it and recounted how he had aggressively treated his illness with various therapies, including monoclonal antibodies and ivermectin.
So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak. I have to sue CNN. CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Yeah, what? So
They must know that that's a lie.
There's a lot of people saying it.
Right, I literally got it from a doctor.
Joe then called out the media's hypocrisy, accusing them of driving false narratives for the sake of sensationalism. He pointed out to their behavior as a prime example of biased reporting.
This is the grand conspiracy, right? The grand
Right.
conspiracy is the pharmaceutical companies are all in cahoots to try to make anybody who takes this stuff look crazy. But what's crazy is look how better I got.
Joe Rogan bounced back from COVID in just 4 days, but CNN never corrected their reporting, a move that turned into a major loss for the network and a big win for Rogan's credibility. Whether it's tackling debates on trans rights, dismantling woke narratives, or calling out the media for spreading falsehoods, Joe Rogan has repeatedly shown why he's one of the most controversial yet captivating figures in the media today. So which of these moments stands out as your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoy watching these heated debates and hard-hitting discussions, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.